Okay, so 34. Jojima 34. So I started to talk about it and then I got diverted. So I want to come back to this. And I invite you to dream into this question with me because it's a really big question. It is when I studied the word invitation, and you look at synonyms and all of the different variations on a word, there's the word invitress in there. And I thought, dang, I like that title, invitress. Like, I'm here to invite people into a new story. Like, who the storytellers are going to bring us home? Who wants to come be a storyteller, a new storyteller with me? And so, as an invitress, the questions that we are willing to engage with, because they keep life interesting. My friend Sam has a beautiful poem about, I will stay as long as it's interesting. Like, I'm, I'm, I'm interested in what it would take to heal the human condition, to heal our collective nervous systems, like starting with that, like just breathing with each other, just infusing little kindness into our daily routine and watching what happens when kindness starts to become contagious. Like I watched a musical last night with this dear sister, and I can't come get away. It's the story of the island of Gander on 9/11. And all these people, 7,000 people on airplanes, were plucked out of the sky and plopped down on this island. And they didn't have news. Some of them were on the plane for like 28 hours before there was enough, stairwells and places to take people. Can you imagine mass exiting 7,000 people to a town of 9,000 people? Like, everybody. There could be no standing on the fringe watching this. This was an all hands on deck. We are in this together moment in a petri dish, a closed island setting that created its own experimental bubble, right? And watching that, I was so lifted and inspired. And I was also brought back to the moments that I was sitting in at 9/11. Everybody knows where they were. These are, this is a stake in the ground, a unifying moment of awareness. Oh, the rules have just changed in my world. Like, who were we before 9/11, after 9/11? And watching that brought all of that anxiety, and we didn't know. Stephen and I happened to be in Boston delivering a training, and somebody said, hang on, and had their phone. I was really irritated because, like, I'm teaching now. You should not be on your phone. And he said, we need to stop. And we turned on a television. And because we were on the East Coast, we saw the second plane hit. And we walked around a ghost town of Boston. Nobody coming in, nobody going out. Hotels doing their best to take care of us, and restaurants trying to, there was a moment where all of the story we had about each other shifted. There was a potentiality for a new narrative about who we were. A lot of the divisiveness was put aside for a period. Those moments in business, we call it, you need a burning platform to make shift happen. Sometimes it takes real threat to create inquiry about how can we do this. And so I'll get the name of the musical and I'll let you know. But it's just so good. And how people walked in like skeptical and fearful and got in people's cars and went home and slept on their couches and were fed food and helped with medications and diapers and just exactly what you would hope humans could do. I'd like to. When I ask people, do you believe we can live in harmony? I'd like to. This is the I'd like to part, this true story of what we're capable of as human beings. So yeah, that was a sweet reminder of a joy of joining in moment. Like, roll up the sleeves. We're building a barn. We're getting an oxen out of the ditch. We're reaching a point where we will not be able to physically tolerate the dissonance between knowing better and doing better. We are becoming so conscious to that gap in our own lives and in our collective story. And there was this moment when I got the download about my mom's passing, and I was washed in grace, just saturated, soaked, nourished in grace, all the way down to my cells of forgiveness. For there was nothing to forgive between my mom and I. I just got to see her whole life flash before mine, because ours were so tightly entwined for so long that it didn't matter anymore how the mother wound played out in our lives. What mattered is that we met each other in grace in the end. That place of appreciation that our parents, our siblings, even our exes, even our children, everybody's doing the best they can all the time. And when we know better, we do better. And to the degree that we struggle with that, that's anxiety, depression. Like, this is all about integrating spirit and matter. And this is the beckoning and the becoming, the electromagnetic alignment of spirit and matter in harmony, not just within ourselves, but within this field of potentiality. Here's the good news, loves. We are headed towards harmony. We have more capacity for that potentiality now than we've ever had in our entire existence. Like, that's worth getting up for every day. So even the dark night of the soul stuff, when it kicks my ass, and it does, and I know it does yours too, this is where you pull the lens back further and further, and you just remember, I got through some really hard stuff before, and life just kept getting better for me. I'm going through another hard period now, but I trust. I have fallen in love with trusting that I am enough to navigate my own story. And in that recognition, in that fulfillment of the promise, your own sacred contract to yourself to show up fully engaged in your life, your innocence meets your life experience now in the gift of wisdom. Like, You become a learning organism. You learn the lessons that were laid out before you. You master your story. So this movement, this 90-10 movement, I haven't shared this piece of it very much, but it's really right there for us. There's this novice human and then apprentice human, where we're learning from others in our communities and we're co-regulating with them, and then we become sort of competent, self-competent, self-actualized, self-aware, self-regulating, self-congratulating, self-celebrating, self-loving. Like, this is the piece people tell me, and I know it is the hardest one. Loving myself. I had so much trouble loving my body because of, well, you know the details. It's been through a lot, but none of it was her fault. None of it is your fault. This is a fault-free, shameless healing zone. My mother did the best she could. It was harder for me, but I did. Sitting with grandmother, coming up on 2 years now. I was taken to the moment of my loss of innocence, and through an observer lens could finally validate the felt sense of my wounding with a physical reality of what had happened, and I could just forgive myself for all the ways I'd been struggling to keep my promises to myself. I was really good at keeping promises to other people, but not so good at keeping promises to myself. That was the food addiction piece. That was the weight. That was the not taking care of myself. Because that was a learned behavior, right? No child designs a life of suffering for themselves. And yet we adapt in ways that create so much self-betrayal and abandonment along the way. And so this movement that you're in, it's hang in there. I want to bring joy to this movement. Yes, there's screaming and primal release that has to happen, and there's tears, and there's anger, and there's sadness, and there's grief. All the feelings of our inner child need to be able to percolate to the surface, and there are mechanisms and tools. My dear sister, Move Mentor, is like helping map the physical reboot of our nervous systems. Like, how do you move out of hypervigilance? Some of us have been in it so long, our shoulders have never been in that parasympathetic space. It even hurts now as I try and relax that shoulder, the one that's been holding everything together, you know? Man, we got so much work to do. We can't be shaming each other. We can't be blaming each other anymore. We got to just show up and say it doesn't matter how we got here. It doesn't matter. We're not looking for a bad guy. We're not trying to be the good guy. We're agreeing to agree that there is a better story ahead for us. And we're agreeing to agree to do the work. The beautiful, joyful work of cleaning up the mess on aisle 3, of taking in a stranger who's been plucked out of their reality and can't even get home to their own reality, like all of those people who were misplaced for 4 to 10 days, depending upon where you were in the world. And the kindness of strangers that met that moment. I'd like to. There's a kindness of strangers woven into us. I've seen it. I've heard the yearning for it. When people say, I'd like to, there's always a wistfulness in that. I want to be able to believe it's possible, that this isn't all there is. I want to help others believe, because I know, because my life, I go back to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 64 years ago, like the wounding started so early. And I wouldn't change a thing. It was my path. It brought me to now. I'm here now. I don't need to live back there. I don't have to relitigate the past. I don't have to make anybody wrong. I have learned the lesson, so I've gone from novice to intern, journeyman, master of my story. And only when we master our own story can we begin to engage in a new collective, collaborative, conscious storytelling. The storytellers will bring us home. This is an invitation to become a part of the new storytellers, to become a part of the new story, to live into it, to not wait for things to get better, for nirvana to show up. No, nirvana, heaven on earth, harmony, peace, ease of beingness. We have to start living the new story in the midst of the chaos. And so I'll come back with a great metaphor to follow up with this. May it be so, I hope.